I'm Brett Walker and welcome to the BCS podcast. This time I'm going to be previewing the 2026-27 English Premier League season, which kicks off this Friday with the help of multiple contributors. And let's start with the defending champions, Arsenal, who are hoping to retain the league title for the first time since 1935. And the Gunners have done well to strengthen in multiple areas by recruiting the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and Christophe Solis among others. However, I can't help thinking that they will need to add some defensive depth in order to cover for the injuries to William Saliba and Jurrien Timber if they are to have any hope of retaining that league title. For more on Arsenal, let's head over to North London to hear from friend of the show, Freddie Law-Keen.
Our transfer business, if you'd ask any Arsenal fan, would probably still feel a little bit underwhelming. I think we're definitely still looking for a marquee attacker in the window, considering we lost Leandro Trossard, who is a cult hero. He was our clutch performance every time. He's probably delivered the goal that most Arsenal fans would say won us the league. That winner in the 1-0 win away at West Ham. VAR assisted win at West Ham that was. So that's going to be an interesting gap in the squad. The obvious replacement there is Christos Solis, the Greek winner, who's come from the Belgian league, very much like Trossard when he came to when he came to Brighton from the Belgian league, So, it's an interesting age. I think he's 24. He's been in the Premier League a few years ago, now with Norwich. And if you ask some Norwich fans, they'll probably say they're quite surprised to see him back. But he's had a really good pre-season, probably our most productive attacker in pre-season. But to see how significant the minutes are going to be and how his goal contribution will affect the squad is still to be determined. We also brought in Bruno Guimaraes, who will be sorely missed in Newcastle. Talk about a fan favourite, a club captain, someone who you wanted to come to Arsenal 4.5 years ago, and I think was quite hurt that we didn't finish the deal. And I think he probably took it out on Arsenal every time we played. So for the first thing, I'm absolutely delighted we never have to see him in Newcastle kit again, because he dominated midfield when we played him. He was fantastic, superb. He's one of the premium midfielders in the Premier League and has been since he joined Newcastle, and solidifies alongside Rice, Zubimendi, Skelly, Ødegaard, Eza. Apologies to anyone who I've missed out there, but probably solidifies Arsenal's midfield as the best unit maybe in the world. So everything about Mikel Arteta's style of play is foundation and base and control, and he adds such a profile of excellence there, and it's definitely raised the level, because we lost Christian Norgard, who has gone to Everton, and with all due respect, Christian Norgard, if that is your replacement signing, that is a huge upgrade. I think outstanding business is probably defensive cover for Saliba and that sort of right side. In recent weeks, we've been linked to both Ezri Konsa and Jarell Quansah. I would be more interested probably in Jarell Quansah, because he maybe fits that right back profile to cover us a little bit more. But if I had to guess now, I'd probably say I would expect us to bring in Ezri Konsa. But the truth is, ask any Arsenal fan, we want an attacker. Would have loved Vinicius Junior, probably the best left wing in the world, who would have just plugged and played at Arsenal any minute he wanted, he would have had. And the search for that profile is still outstanding, which is a shame. That would have been a level raiser, especially when we look to bridge that gap in the Champions League. But it's hard to do. I think there's talks of Julian Alvarez, who clearly wants to leave Atletico Madrid. I think he would be a great addition, but that's not the same. That's a striker profile. That's a central attacking profile that will need a rework of the team and a rework of the squad currently, as our striker position looks quite full with Havertz, Gyökeres, Marino and Jesus. A fifth striker there would be congested. So some outstanding stuff. See if we can ship any more players. Maybe Jesus, maybe a Haylender like Guarneri, who we don't want to see go but might have to move, and then bring an attacker, bring in defensive cover to go. I think it'll be a really good year. We've never had the pressure of playing as champions, but now the pressure of crossing that line has been lifted. I think it'll be a very interesting, engaging, and a lot of pressure will be lifted at the Emirates, and I'm looking forward to it.
In terms of the other title challengers, Manchester City have got to be part of that conversation. Yes, Pep Guardiola has left after a decade of success, but in Enzo Maresca they have a successor who's already been the assistant manager of the club in the past, and so he has existing relationships with much of the squad, and his credentials as a manager were very much helped by the dramatic loss of form that Chelsea suffered after Maresca left that managerial role in the new year. They have also brought in some additional quality in the likes of Elliot Anderson, with further additions imminent. Much like Arsenal though, I can't help thinking that Manchester City will need to bring in some additional defensive depth if they want to challenge for the title across the entire season, given that Manuel Akanji, Nathan Ake and John Stones have all left the club since the end of last season. Meanwhile, Manchester United will be looking to build upon the good run of form that they had in the second half of last season under their now permanent head coach Michael Carrick. Carrick will be leading Manchester United into the Champions League again though this season, and so it will be interesting to see how they balance that added workload, particularly given that much like Arsenal and Manchester City, they have yet failed to add additional defenders to a team that looked weak in that area last season. Much like their neighbours in Manchester, Liverpool also start the season with a new manager in Andoni Iraola. Iraola ended his time in Brighton by guiding the team to a 7th place finish and a spot in the Europa League, and so he will now hope to build upon the good reputation he has gained in English football by competing for the Premier League title with his new side. For more on how Liverpool's season will go, let's hear from first-time contributor Adam Smith.
In terms of notable signings, well, the biggest issue we've got so far is that we haven't really made any. Jeremy Jacquet was bought in January. He's come in. Okay, good news, but he hasn't been fit for pre-season, so that's a problem. We've signed Victor Munoz out on the wing. Great, we do need more options, I guess, in the attacking areas, but problematically, he plays on the left, and that's basically where we've got all of our strength at the moment. It's tricky for Liverpool. I think the biggest issue that we've got is that we've brought in a manager who uses a high turnover of players, likes to press, likes to be able to really ask a lot of the men that's under his control, and yet we haven't given him any men to be able to do that with. So, look, by the time this goes out, I'm really hoping that we've suddenly made 10 signings and it all looks brilliant and exciting. But right now, it's unquestionably a concern. Iraola, the big arrival, but he plays in a style that just, at the moment, I don't know how he's going to get the best out of what we're looking for him to do. So, that is the biggest unresolved issue for us, I think, is what it is that we're trying to do with the squad. We've got brilliant players, there's no question of that. We've seen in pre-season the work that Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak have been able to try and do together. But at the moment, we don't have enough people, and that is a problem. Where do I think we'll finish? I think we'll finish top 4. I don't think we'll be able to put a title challenge together this season simply because of the aforementioned issues, but I do think we'll be able to do top 4.
Speaking of Liverpool, Chelsea also start the new season with a new manager in the form of ex-Liverpool player Xabi Alonso, who impressed a lot of people by going undefeated with Bayer Leverkusen as they won the Bundesliga 2 seasons ago. After his time as Real Madrid manager was cut short last season, he will now want to rebuild that reputation by getting Chelsea back into the Premier League title picture after a 10th place finish last season. And it has to be said, Chelsea do have a very good team to help him do that has also added the likes of Morgan Rogers, Maxime Lacroix, Danny Welbeck and Jordan Henderson, among others. In terms of the teams competing for the European places, we have to start with Aston Villa. Unai Emery has done an excellent job of establishing Villa among the European contenders every season since he took over, and he has also cemented Villa's place as a European side by winning the Europa League for a record 5th time as a manager last season. Villa will now go into the Champions League this season again, although they have lost some massive players in the likes of Morgan Rogers, Luca Digne and Yuri Tielemans, and so they will need additions like Yao Gomez, Alejandro Garnacho and Johan Manzarbi once he's fit again to really hit the ground running if they are to compete this season. On that, I also can't help thinking that they will need to add some additional quality in order to do that though. It also can't be ignored that Tottenham Hotspur have done a fantastic job of adding the depth and quality that they needed following successive 17th place finishes in the Premier League the past 2 seasons. In Andy Robertson, they've got a great veteran addition at left back, and he is joined by both Marcos Senesi and Jan-Paul Ben Hecker in a new look defence, as well as Sandro Tonali and Mateus Fernandes in midfield. In Roberto De Zerbi, Spurs also have a very good manager, and so they should be in and among the European places this season. In terms of the mid-table teams, and by mid-table I mean everyone from 8th down to around 14th, I think Everton have done a good job of recruiting this summer. By bringing in Brennan Johnson and also turning Tyreek George's loan into a permanent transfer, Everton have brought some good young quality and flair into an otherwise solid team. In David Moyes, we also know that when he's given time, he can turn his teams into teams that get into the European places, and so I would not be surprised if Everton are able to creep into one of those European qualification places come the end of the season. On this, I would expect Brighton Hove Albion to be a mid-table side this season, given that they will also be competing in the Europa Conference League. Fabian Hysela's side should have enough about them that they can give a good account of themselves on both fronts, but I can't help thinking that that Thursday-Sunday game cycle will likely affect their domestic form, particularly given that they've lost some very important first team players since the end of last season and arguably haven't replaced them yet. For more on how Brighton will do this season, let's hear from first time contributor Dave Shaw.
This season, it's a complete unknown. Complete unknown. You cannot predict this season because we just don't know. Danny Welbeck leaving at the Blue was a complete shock, which leaves us with no fit striker to start the season with. We thought possibly Evan Ferguson will come back into the frame. That appears not. It looks like he's going out on loan. Leaves us with what, just Jorginho Rutter? I don't know. He's a bit unproven at this point. Didn't play much last season. Belieber starts the season injured. Mitoma starts the season not fully fit. Mint has gone down for the 3-4 months injured. We are really lacking in forward options, so we just don't know where we are right now. However, we have made a record signing. £40 million for Vukovic from Spurs. Again, a highly topped player. Hopefully we can work our magic on him. Also got the Leeds lads, Sturgic, but 2 centre-backs, which we do need. We've addressed the issues at the back-ish. However, we got rid of Veltman, which is a big shame. He's gone to West Ham. He was a solid rock at the back when he was fit. But however, we still should have enough to be, one, survive, which is always the main aim, stay in the Premier League. I'd like to think mid-table still. And we'll all take that because I think a lot of fans, like myself, our main focus is our second European campaign, which is about to start. Albeit, the Conference League, I couldn't care. I think many of us Brighton fans couldn't care. We're in Europe. Like I said, we don't forget where we've came from. The fact that we're playing European football again is huge. It's absolutely huge. Very exciting. We've got a qualifier against Tromso coming up, 2 legs. Then we should win that. If we don't, then this video could very much change. But we qualified for the groups, and we would love a cup run. Seeing what our rivals Palace did, seeing what West Ham have done this competition. We really would. What a chance to win some silverware and some European silverware. Our first major silverware at that. And I think we would all take a big, deep European cup run and sacrifice the Premier League position of 16th, 15th, as long as we stay up. To have the memories of a European Cup run would be awesome. So my prediction, would be, I think we're going to finish 14th, 13th. However, I'll happily take that for a real deep run at the Europa Conference League.
In terms of the other Premier League sides competing in Europe this season, Sunderland should be okay. They surprised a lot of people, myself included, by qualifying for the Europa League last season, and I can't help thinking that they really do need to add some additional depth if they are to compete on two fronts, but something about the way that they set up and played last season tells me that they should be okay. Meanwhile, in Nottingham Forest, they have recruited an absolutely fantastic manager in Oliver Glasner, who won the Europa Conference League with Crystal Palace last season. Therefore, I think that Forest should do very well on both fronts this season. Speaking of Crystal Palace, I think they made a massive error by allowing Oliver Glasner's contract to run out at the end of last season, when the man who has brought the FA Cup to the club for the first time ever says that you need to bring more depth in if you're going to be able to compete at home and in Europe, and you ignore him. That to me is really just a terrible mistake. I think that given that they've not adequately replaced those who have left, and they also haven't added the depth that they need, given that they're going to be competing at a even higher level in Europe this season, I think there's a real danger that they could even get sucked into a relegation battle if things don't start well under new manager Pierre Sage this season. On this, Bournemouth will be competing in Europe for the first time ever, having had to replace their manager. I think that the Cherries have downgraded by replacing Andoni Iraola with Marco Rose, and much like Palace, I think that there is a danger that they could even get sucked into a relegation battle if they don't add some more depth before the transfer window closes. In the same vein, Fulham established themselves as a solid mid-table Premier League side under Marco Silva. I personally am not convinced by the appointment of Alvaro Arbeloa to replace him, nor by the quality of the player additions they have made since the end of last season. They should have enough quality in this squad to be okay, but then again, I said the same about West Ham last season. For me, Newcastle United should be another team who finish mid-table. In Bruno Guimaraes, Anthony Gordon and Sandro Tonali, they have lost some very important first team players, and those players have been replaced by largely unproven young talent from overseas, given the club's new transfer policy. Newcastle United also have a new manager in the form of Matthias Gisel, and so for me, Newcastle's 2026-27 Premier League campaign will be one where they consolidate their position in the league and lay the groundwork for future campaigns. For more on how the Magpies will do this season, let's hear from friend of the show, Joe Lenton.
We've lost some big players in the summer. We lost Bruno, my hero, which I'm gutted about. Tonali, not so fussed about. Gordon, but I think we might have hopefully replaced him with a good player. And Trippier with players like Pope in goal, Murphy and Willock maybe following out the door soon. So we've lost loads and loads of experience, and we seem to now be going back down that route a lot of teams are doing, and trying to buy in young players. So like I said, left wing to replace Gordon, we've got young player Torian, and he's going to be pretty decent. So I think he's going to, from pre-season friendlies already, he's going to do a good job, I think. Brought in Bamba, who plays in central midfield, defensive. We've brought in a wonder kid, one of those from Ajax, so hopefully Sean Sturr can impress, and he's another one that's impressed in some of the pre-season friendlies. He's got a lot of flair and kind of attractive football about him, so we'll see how that goes. But we also, amongst all that, lost our manager Eddie Howe too, so that's going to be interesting. And the guy we brought in, Matthias Gisel, our tight shirt wearing German friend, is quite lively, I think. So in some ways, I am gutted Eddie's left, but I think it got to that time where we needed something to change. I don't know, it's all getting a bit stale. So Gisel coming in is going to be, like I say, lively on the touchline, and he might rile a few refs and linos. So hopefully he can get a bit more energy back into the players, because that's what we seemed to miss a lot last season. I think some unresolved issues we need to sort out is our full-backs. We need to keep Tino and Lewis Hall fit, because they could be massive for us if we could. And then I really think we need to bring in a kind of experienced player in midfield. I hate to look at Sunderland as a good example, but like they did with Jacare, we need that player to replace Bruno, someone who's been there, done that. I know we've been linked with Højbjerg and a few at Paulinho as well. So, I mean, a lot of fans have moaned about that, but I think it's a sensible option, so I'd be up for that. In terms of how we'll do, I think it will be a struggle as usual. The last couple of seasons have been a bit weird like that, but I'd be happy if we got into the top 10. Might be a bit optimistic, but I'm usually wildly over-optimistic, so we'll see how that works out. Fingers crossed it'll be a good season. Fingers crossed Newcastle get themselves sorted, and yeah, away the lads.
Having threatened the European places last season, Brentford should have another good campaign. Keith Andrews has a solid side that may yet be able to compete for a European place again this season, but they certainly shouldn't be worried about threatening the bottom of the table. For me, the same is also true of Leeds United. They had a very respectable campaign last season and they've recruited well since, and so they should be able to cement themselves as a Premier League side this season. For more on Leeds United, let's hear from friend of the show, Ryan Owen.
Where do I think we'll finish? Somewhere between 10th and 15th would be what I'd say. But I'm not stupid. A few injuries in the wrong places is always the concern. We've got good depth. You know, it's Sean Longstaff on the bench. It's Ao Tanaka on the bench. Ilya Gruev on the bench. Brendan Aronson hopefully on the bench once Noah Okafor's fully fit. James Justin eventually will be on the bench. So we've got good, experienced, physical players on the bench, and that gives me confidence, because what happens with the newly promoted clubs is they think they've got a good 11, and then they get punched in the face, someone gets injured, and they can't deal with it anymore. It happened to Leeds in years gone by. I'm not stupid. It could happen to Leeds again. Could we be in a fight? Potentially, but I'm also sensible. I've looked at some of the other squads. I've looked at other outgoings. I've looked at the physicality of the newly promoted teams. And whilst I think Ipswich might well give it a damn good go, I still have concerns over all of the newly promoted teams. And Leeds are not in Europe. They're not in Europe, which Sunderland are, who are struggling to spend money, really, because they spent so much last summer. They're struggling to push it again this summer. They need a bigger squad. They're in Europe. Key injury to Granit Xhaka. What's happening next? Key injury to Brian Brobby. What's happening next? I think Leeds might be all right.
As for the teams that will be relegated, I can't see past the 3 promoted sides. If any of them are to stay in the division, it will most likely be Ipswich Town, given that they have recent Premier League experience and have recruited well this summer. Otherwise, despite doing a very good job last season, I think Frank Lampard's Coventry City will go straight back down, and I will be very surprised if Hull City finish the season in anything other than 20th place. Before we go, let's hear from some of our contributors on who they think will win the Premier League this season.
Who's going to win the Premier League? I think Arsenal. I think it's Arsenal's to lose as well. With all the managerial merry-go-rounds, City starting afresh, Chelsea, new manager, new squad by the look of it, Liverpool going for a merry-go-round. I think these teams are going to take a while to adjust. I think Arsenal are very stable. They've made a good addition, good signing as well with Bruno from Newcastle. I think it's theirs to lose, to be honest.
What I would say is that I think people are sleeping a little bit on what's going on at Chelsea just because they're so bonkers. I think there's a slight bit of, people underestimating what Xabi Alonso will be able to do when he's got a really good squad. He's been in there for long enough to be able to work with everybody. And I think maybe they've got no Europe as well. So that he can focus totally on the league. And he's a very talented manager, as we saw with his work at Bayer Leverkusen. So, I don't think Maresca will be able to get City firing enough to be able to do it. I don't think that Man United will be anywhere near it. I don't think that Tottenham will be anywhere near it. So I wouldn't be shocked if it came down to a shootout, basically between Manchester City and between Arsenal and Chelsea.
Maybe Arsenal again. Man City under a new management, an interesting prospect. Maybe Liverpool will come back again this season, and maybe Man United could push a bit. So I think I'm going to go Arsenal, but I think it's quite open.
And I think Man City will win the league, because Arsenal quietly are starting the season with William Saliba out, Declan Rice not fully fit, Bukayo Saka not fully fit, and there's just this little bit of me that says if there's ever any ingredients for a title holder to struggle out the gates and someone to put the pressure on, it's your centre-back's injured, your central defensive midfielder's not fit, and your star winger's not fully fit. Something says to me that Enzo Maresca will start well at City, they're healthier, and Man City will win the league.
For now, that brings an end to this 2026-27 English Premier League season preview edition of the BCS podcast. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I certainly do hope to see you again next time. Bye bye now. The BCS podcast is written, produced, edited and hosted by me, Brett Walker. Thank you to Boban Apostolov and Pixabay for the use of the music and sound effects in this episode. This episode features contributions from Freddie Law-Keen, Joe Lenton, Ryan Owen, David Shaw and Adam Smith.